Welcome to another Noob Eternally suggestion review, and today, we're taking a look at Morijjay's Kashimo suggestion, which was sent to me by quite a few people and Morijjay himself, as well as getting pretty popular in the Z Discord, and I can see why. The suggestion, while not perfect, looks absolutely amazing with the images that accompany it, and the design itself is pretty unique as well. Oh, and also, for my longtime viewers, surprise face reveal. I'll be using a face cam in my subsequent videos, so expect more of this kind of thing. Before we start reviewing the suggestion though, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more interesting Jujutsu Shenanigans suggestions and general information about the game. Now, let's get into the video. The first passive for the suggestion is called Nioi Staff, and the first part of it seems to be purely cosmetic. The player carries a staff over their shoulders and uses it for their attacks, which seems to be a different way that M1s are going to be done rather than being fists. As for the other part of the passive, their fourth left mouse button is infused with electrified cursed energy, and if it lands successfully, it fills a segment of the voltage bar, which seems to be something this suggestion is based around. As for the second passive, this is called Cursed Energy Trait, and it makes it so that the player's attacks that are infused with electrified cursed energy, so the fourth left mouse button attack, bypasses block, dealing damage without ragdolling or stunning the opponent. Now, there's something I want to say about this passive, and it's that it's not going to be that good. The reason I say that is because your fourth left mouse button attack is very punishable, and you never want to M1 someone's block with your fourth M1 because then they're gonna unblock and then hit you right back. So this passive is more of a consolation prize than anything else. It's a little bit of free damage if you screw up royally, but you're not actually going to be playing around it or using it that much. It's really just a consolation prize if you screw up. You get one M1's worth of damage and now you get to be comboed for half of your HP. Definitely not something you're going to be aiming for, just something that you get as a little bonus if you mess up. So, while it's definitely a balanced passive, it's also not that great of a passive either. Though it's not really a problem with the suggestion because, again, it's really small, no big deal. As for the third passive, it's called Accumulated Voltage. A 4-segment bar is located below the Awakening bar, and these segments are consumed when the user activates certain move variants or their R special. So it's sort of like an empowered version of your attacks can be done if you have this segment bar built up, which you build up by doing your 4th M1 on people. And it's a generally interesting passive because it encourages Kashimo to sort of play aggressively, and then he can burst his opponent down, get a lot of burst damage by using those enhanced move variants depending on how good they are. Finally, for the R special of Kashimo, it lets him use up some of his charge for an extra move. The user can discharge the segments in the form of a bolt that auto-tracks the opponent, with 2 segments summoning a combo extending bolt, and 4 segments summoning one with an explosive effect that doesn't combo extend. I'd also assume this one guard breaks, but I don't know for sure. And if it doesn't, that's really bad compared to the 2-charge version. Anyways, my main concern of the 4th passive is that it could make Kashimo's combos way too strong. Something that needs to be noted is that no base moveset in the whole game has an actual combo extender or genuine combo finisher as part of their R special, because if you pair that with 4 moves that are combo extenders or finishers, they let a character doing ridiculous damage. The closest there is to something like that is Gojo's Aerial R, which you can do after Lapse Blue, but even then, it's a very small amount of damage. They're usually utility moves or modifications to your normal moves, like Megami's Shadow Travel or Hikari's Counter. And the sole exception to this is Sukuna's R, which actually is a combo finisher that deals damage scaling on health, but it's not a great reference point because it's an awakening designed to be brokenly overpowered, while this is supposed to be a strong but balanced base. This special either gives you a combo extender, which, self-explanatory as to how good that is, or a combo finisher if you have 4 charges, which I would assume does a lot of damage, because if it doesn't, then it'd be a direct downgrade to the 2-charge version of the move. Speaking of which, the author describes it as an auto-tracking bolt, which I assume is ranged, and unless there's something really good about the exploding 4-charge version compared to the extending one, which also means combo starting right away, the 2-charge version might unironically just be flat out better, since usually combos do like 50 to 60 damage, as well as replenishing your charge of Kashimo, since it would let him M1 his opponent 4 times, as opposed to the 4-charge version, which doesn't get you any of those things unless its damage number was ridiculously high, as in more than 50, which just makes another problem as that would be stupidly overpowered. This isn't like a Magneto thing either, where you get to choose between one or the other for the situation, since what you use depends entirely on how much meter you already have. There either needs to be something big to make the 4-charge version better, the 4-charge should extend, and a 2-charge combo finish, or alternatively, you should be able to choose how much meter you actually want to spend. Now we're going to move on to the actual moves in the suggestion. The first one is called Blitzing Speed, and the user lunges forward at the opponent in a rapid rushdown style, delivering a powerful gut punch before swatting them away with their staff, which seems kind of similar to Choso's Flowing Red scale, and if that's the case, seems fine. It probably would have more range, and it'd actually work as a rushdown move, and I'd assume this would be blockable too, so that there's some counterplay. Looks like a good move for catching people who are off guard, but also letting Kashimo rush down as well. But it's also going to be punishable too, probably on block, so that you can't just throw this out randomly for free. Pretty well-designed move in my opinion, even though it's really basic. As for the R variant, this consumes one segment, and instead of lunging, the user teleports instantaneously and delivers an electrified strike, followed by a swift backhand that sends the opponent flying to the side, which seems to just be the same, but with probably more damage. And honestly, that's fine. You're consuming your meter to deal more damage, that's kind of what the meter should be for in the first place. So more meter means more burst, that's how the author's designing the suggestion, and also that instant teleportation thing also seems like it could help him catch the opponent off guard, since it's harder to react to that way, so I'm fine with this move. I think it's a decent rushdown move, fits Kashimo if that's what the author is going for. As for the second move, it's called Edo Brutality, and user does a stance, and if hit during the pose, they wrap the staff around the opponent's arm and throw them overhead for a combo starter. So it's basically just your average counter, but it's actually a combo starter here, which is a little bit concerning, because no counter in the game so far is a combo starter, or at least a true one. Yuji's Morijjay kick, it kind of comes close to being a combo starter, but it's not 100% true, it's a little bit inconsistent. Same with Akari's, because he can do reserve balls into shutter doors, which is also sort of a combo starter, but this is just like a flat-out combo starter, which might make it the best counter in the game, but I think it's fine. Adding a counter onto a rushdown character is probably fine. It makes it harder to punish them, and lets them play a little bit more aggressively, so that they can like get out of jail sort of, and also force the opponent to play a little bit carefully around them too. So I think this is okay as an idea. I should fit the character depending on how the other moves work. However, I do have some problems with the R variant. And the way the R variant works is that instead of using accumulated voltage, even though it says consumes one segment, that doesn't really make sense, the user consumes the awakening bar. And what happens is that they send the opponent flying away, which means it's not a combo starter. And that's kind of a problem, because here's the thing, having a combo is always usually better than doing a flat-out combo finisher, unless you're in that one extremely niche circumstance where you have zero moves at all, and you don't have any moves to capitalize off of the combo starter to do some more damage. But even then, this is also probably worse, because you have to remember, 4th M1 means you get an extra voltage bar, so you're basically consuming your awakening for just an objectively worse version of your counter. You don't get a combo, and because you don't get a combo, you don't get a voltage bar, so you're just dealing less damage. It's worse than the other version. Honestly, it feels like these should be swapped. The first version with no charge should be the combo finisher, and then the second version, the one that consumes awakening meter or charge, whichever one the author wants it to be, should be the one that combo starts. Like, a combo starter is almost always better, especially with the suggestion where combos help Kashimo do his move variants. So definitely don't agree with how this R variant is handled. As for the third move, this one's called Controlled Discharge, and it's a little bit interesting. The user strikes the opponent over their head with the staff, followed by a rapid barrage of blows, so basically rapid punches. And that's really simple, but it's the no charge variant, so that's kind of to be expected. No charge gets you basic variants, and it's the R variant of this move that I think is more important to focus on. The R variant has a user initiate the exact same sequence, and after striking the opponent on the head, they plant their staff into the ground, releasing a burst of electrified cursed energy, sending the opponent flying back. Then, if the user presses 3 again with their staff, a bolt of electricity discharges, striking the opponent before the staff returns to the user's hand, dealing less damage than the one in the R special, but having a longer range. Now, they don't specify if this is a combo extender or starter or not, and so I'm gonna assume it's a finisher. And, like, I think it's good if you can also stall with the staff planted and not actually set it off immediately, because then it becomes kind of like Choso's Flowing Red Scale aerial variant, where you basically have a landmine on the ground constantly, and so you can use that for a lot of pressure to basically play carefully so that they aren't hit by that bolt. It's like just a pretty cool idea here, because it lets him set up some stuff that makes it easier for him to win neutral engagements. So cool, I like the idea here for sure. And finally, we're gonna go on to the fourth and last move, and this one is also pretty unique. The user hunches over, strikes a pose, and when pressed once, a burst of electrified curse energy is unleashed in all directions, just causing AoE damage and ragdolling opponents. So basically just free damage move if you get a ragdoll and like you can pop it on top of your opponent, extra damage. Really basic, but again, that's probably how all of the no charge versions of this moves are going to be, because that's what they're supposed to be, basic moves. The charged versions are the ones that are supposed to be the ones you're actually using, while the non-charged versions are supposed to be the ones you use to get the charged versions, so I'm fine with that being basic. As for the accumulated voltage version, they can hold the move to consume up to 4 segments of the bar, and when released, the burst of energy gains a significantly increased range and higher damage output, which is really good actually, because depending on how much they mean by higher damage output, that could be extremely punishing, kind of like Choso's Piercing Blood charge variant, which is insanely good, and depending on the startup too, if you could uppercut into this, that's a lot of damage, like just a really good move. Also, there's another part of this move, and if you do it with maximum charge, you get a temporary speed boost, similar to Hikari's R during a jackpot, though I don't think Hikari gets a speed boost during his move. He gets shorter move durations and shorter cooldown speed, but I digress. And during this powered up state, any move used automatically becomes an electrified variant without consuming additional segments from the voltage bar. So that's really good, because it means if you can set up 4 segments of the bar, then you can pop this move and then just keep on going and not have to worry about the segments. Though they don't actually say how long the buff lasts for, so I wish they would specify that because it would make it easier to evaluate, but it's a generally good idea. You want to get 4 segments, uppercut into the move, and then you get to fight your opponent in a buff state. So, like, it's a pretty cool idea. One that requires him to build up to the charge, and then once he's built up to it, he can use this move and then basically burst the opponent down. He's kind of like a character that sort of has to ramp up like Choso, but rather than Choso who like ramps up once and then he's kind of just in that state since his awakening bar refills itself anyways, Kashimo's kind of like bad and then he goes really good and then he goes back to being bad and good, and you kind of have to like alternate between those, and I think it's a generally unique idea. Pretty much like it. Now we're going to move on to the Awakening, and this has drawbacks and some passives as well. The first drawback is that the player's Awakening is their lifeline, so like Mahoraga, once the Awakening is finished, the player dies, but the player can refill the bar by landing attacks on opponents. And honestly, this feels a little bit non-canon. I don't think he needs that thing where he gets his bar back by filling it, if this is supposed to be like a last-ditch kind of Awakening. I guess it makes sense in like the sense that he probably kind of needs it if he's gonna have an Awakening like that kills him, so that's not a bad Awakening, but I don't know, it doesn't really fit, to be honest. It's just my personal opinion there. As for the second drawback, it's limited reserves. The player's accumulated voltage bar, which he gets max accumulated voltage on Awakening, can't be refilled by landing attacks, so you only have a limited reserve available. Meaning that you basically get 4 burst moves and then like, or whatever, you get 4 bars to use for burst, and then once you've done that, no more. So it's a Awakening that diminishes in power the longer you go on. And finally, you lose your Miyoi staff, so parry a cosmetic thing besides the not getting any more charge back. As for the actual passives, the first one's Absolute Manifestation. All attacks, including left mouse buttons, are infused with electrified curse energy. Blocking them builds up charge with each hit, and if the fourth one connects, it triggers a block break, temporarily stunning the opponent. What's confusing me a little bit about this is if it's your 4th M1 just breaks block automatically, or if it's like if you hit someone's block 3 times and then you M1 them a 4th time, it breaks the block. I mean, it's a good passive for sure, but any good player is not going to just sit there and let you M1 their block 4 times. Most people who are actually decent at the game are going to take 2 hits, which is what I do a lot of the time, unblock, and then M1 you right back. That's called M1 trading. It's a really common thing in this game. So you're never going to land 4 M1s on someone's block on anyone who isn't basically brain dead. But, I mean, it's still an interesting passive depending on how it is. And since it's a positive passive, it can't really hurt the character. Better it be underpowered than overpowered, because you don't want an Awakening being ridiculously strong, do you? As for the second passive, the player's movement speed is slightly increased, making them more agile and nimble, and dashes are now instantaneous. That one concerns me a little. So, Heroes Battleground dashes, basically. My thought on this passive is kind of simple. It sort of fits. He's he's an awakening that relies on getting hits to actually stay alive, but at the same time, giving a flat-out movement speed increases, it just feels like it unbalances him a lot as well. He can't use this for running, obviously, because then like you're gonna die because you need to hit people. But it also just makes him really annoying to fight, and also the instantaneous dashes just make it really hard to counter as well. I don't really think he should have a passive like this, but at the same time, maybe I'm wrong. Sukuna has ranged M1, so something like this isn't actually that unbalanced. I think it actually makes sense. You know what? Scratch that. Yeah, this makes sense. I get it. Let me know in the comments what you think, because I feel like there's a lot of ways you can feel on this. It's just something I'm not sure how to feel about, because it could really make him annoying to fight. As for the third passive, it's maximum voltage. When you awaken, the accumulated voltage bar is instantly filled to maximum capacity, but it cannot be recharged by landing electrified curse energy blows. So this is basically a drawback passive, just more information on it. It's the information being that you get all your bars filled up. And as for the R special, you can consume 2 units of your voltage bar to reconstruct them yourself. And this restores 35% of your awakening bar and HP. And to be honest, I don't really like this idea. I feel like if it's an awakening that already gets back energy for M1ing people, he shouldn't have the ability to just negate that whole thing by consuming 2 units. Like, this is a 70, like, in total, this is 70% of your awakening bar and HP back. And it just feels like it's too much. It shouldn't be there, because if he already has all of these things that help him actually land the hits to sustain his awakening, he doesn't need this on top of it that makes him even harder to kill. At that point, it's just way too overpowered. So that's one thing that I do think shouldn't be there, because it makes his awakening way too strong. Like, it's already really strong. It doesn't need that extra sustain. As for the first move of the awakening, it's called Thunderous Roar. The player does a powerful sonic boom that covers a long range and deals AoE damage. Then anyone hit gets teleported to, and they have their head slammed into the ground, doing a lot of damage. There's also a close range variant that just does an electromagnetic blast from your hand, dealing a small explosion that also deals AoE damage. One question I have is what's going to happen if more than one person gets hit, because the suggestion has a thing where you like slam one person's head into the ground, but also it's AoE, so how is that going to work? Are you going to teleport to everyone and slam their head into the ground? It's just one small nitpick, but something that does need to be addressed, because it has like a single target kind of animation, but it's also AoE, which doesn't fit. But as a whole, this fits fine. AoE move, gonna help Kashimo catch up to people, and just also acts as free good damage if you're up close too. It's a good move, pretty much fine with it, seems like a nice awakening move. As for the second move, it's called Galvanic Rush. The player clasps their hands behind their back and releases a burst of energy that deals AoE damage. Then the recoil from that propels them forward at high speeds. The player then uses this momentum to run at an extremely high velocity for 8 seconds, which seems pretty similar to one of those Sonic moves from The Strongest Battlegrounds, if you know what I'm talking about. And this leaves a trail of destruction and electricity in their wake. Anything in their path is sent flying. So, kind of what a lot of games make that Gojo Rush that he did in Shibuya like. But anyways, this move also seems fine. It would help him catch up to people for sure. Definitely gonna get countered by counters, but I mean, it should have some counterplay. I'm actually not sure what the counterplay to this is without having a counter though, because this doesn't seem like overwhelming luck where the hits are kind of like periodic, so you can actually dodge them if you know the timing of when the hits are. This just seems like the user turns into a big ball of death for 8 seconds, which, by the way, 8 seconds is a lot of time. That duration probably needs to be reduced, because 8 seconds is a lot of time to just be a ball of death, okay? That needs to be nerfed. But generally, I just think this move needs counterplay to it. Not big counterplay, because of course it needs to be good, but I don't see any counterplay for this move without having a counter, and unlike Overwhelming Luck, where you can actually dodge some of the hits to minimize the damage, this one just doesn't seem like you can do that. That's my only nitpick with it, but yeah. It feels like an awakening move besides that. The third move is called Meteoric Onslaught. The player leaps back, charges up several energy spears into the sky at random, and then they hover in the air for a brief moment. Then they swing their arms downward, and then they cause hundreds of those energy spears to rain down, doing a bunch of explosive detonations upon impact to the ground. As for the air variant, the user hovers in the air, clasps their hands together in front of them, and then does a massive beam of energy that obliterates anything in their path, kind of like Plasma Wave. So, I think this suggestion works fine. It's a big AoE damage move that just nukes the whole map, and it seems like it'd be a lot of fun. It definitely make players feel like they're in Awakening, because, yeah, you're nuking the entire map. You feel like the boss if you're doing this kind of move. So, there's not much you can say about this move. It's really basic, but all at the same time, seems like a lot of fun. Kind of like a normal nuke move that'd be a lot of fun to use. Finally, we have the fourth move, which is All or Nothing, and this one I actually do have some stuff to say about it. This move kills a user, and it releases a massive EMP wave that stuns anybody caught in the range. Then they leap high into the air, and then they descend, doing a colossal explosion that obliterates anything within the blast zone. So basically, you're trading your whole life, you're basically ending your Awakening early to kill every single person around you. It's a big FU kind of move. Pretty fun, definitely fits with Kashimo's Awakening. The only problem I have with it is that this Awakening's passive doesn't really fit with it. And here's the reason I say that. Because of how Kashimo can infinitely sustain himself, a move like this doesn't really fit. Like, if it was a timed Awakening where you have a certain amount of time to use your Awakening, and then, like, you know when it's about to run out and you can't really do anything about that, then it makes sense. Then you can use this move at the very end and just squeeze out whatever last bit of value you want from your Awakening. But here, as long as you just keep hitting people, you can sustain your Awakening for as long as you want. Because of that fact, the fact that you can sustain your Awakening infinitely, you don't really need to use this move. Or at least you're not ever going to be in a situation where you actually have a clear indication that you're really supposed to use this, where it's actually a better option than just trying to cling onto life and just M1ing your opponent. It seems like it'd be funny, but like, if you can infinitely sustain your Awakening as Kashimo, which again is something I have a problem with, I don't think that should be a thing in this suggestion, then this move really doesn't have a point, unless you just want to do it for the funnies. So that's my main problem with this move, mostly because it conflicts with the suggestion's infinite sustain.